Candidates typically go through some form of transformation as they crisscross the country, canvassing for votes to becoming arguably the most powerful elected politician on the planet. And all that fire and bluster while in campaign mode tends to be replaced with sober policy speeches. But Donald Trump threw out the rule book, or perhaps didn't even read it when he entered the Oval Office. And he's changed the way that America looks at the presidency. Well, joining us from Clute in Texas is Ron Paul. He was a congressman for more than 20 years and a three-time presidential candidate. Ron Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Now, some people will say that you could draw a line, maybe not a straight one, but a line nonetheless, between your run for president years ago and where we are now with Donald Trump in terms of the way you talked about racial identity, being anti-elitist, and various topics like that. So how much credit do you take for Donald Trump being in the Oval Office?
Well, I hope not too much, because I didn't vote for him. I didn't support him, although some of his supporters were my supporters because he wanted to change, and he described it, and he wanted a different foreign policy. He wanted a better relationship with Russia, but that hasn't turned out that way. And so therefore, some of the things that he has done, I would support, and I'm happy about it. You know, I like less taxes and less regulations. But when it comes to foreign policy and civil liberties, which is very important to libertarians, he hasn't done a very good job, and we're not very happy with that. So I would not say that he represents the libertarian side of the political spectrum.
Ron Paul, as a veteran politician, looking at the way that Trump has run the office, do you not think that with his tweeting, with some of his statements, he's denigrated the office of president, perhaps irreversibly, for the future?
Yeah, I think so, especially what he says. But, you know, in some ways, a few of us, I think, well, you know, this is one way that a person was able to get around with the establishment media, because we think we get a bum rap if we're for less government. And he was able to control the media. He had some experience in it. But when it comes to what he says and how often he says it and what he doesn't use it in the way I would use it. I would use it to try to present views and viewpoints and explain why less government is better and why we should spend less money and why we should bring our troops home. So it would be used quite differently. But the mechanism of going directly to the people, there's something rather neat about that, because we circumvent, you know, the controlled media, but we, of course, have cable and different other things and radio that we can get around to a degree. But I think Trump was very successful in getting around the mainstream media, but the message didn't always come out the way I think it should have.
And is this what we have to expect now going forward in the United States, this kind of celebrity politician? Can we expect Oprah Winfrey, The Rock, Mark Zuckerberg to be president in years to come? Is that what the future of American politics has to look forward to?
Absolutely not.
Well, it wouldn't bother me if they believed in if they really believed in something, unfortunately, that's not likely to happen. But I think the mechanisms have definitely changed, and reaching the people will be different. But I'm more interested in trying to promote the ideas. That's the only thing that really counts, you know, on what our policies are. When we talk about the Middle East and Turkey and Syria and all this, it's important what the people think and what they put up with and tolerate. And I think the important thing for somebody like myself and those of us who believe differently, more traditionally, what we believed America was all about was minding our own business. You know, that to us is what's important. And I fear a little bit if it's only done by tweeting and social media, and all the danger there is that many of us now see that social media oftentimes in an arm of the big government, because this is how some of the security and the privacy of the people get lost, because Facebook and Google and others share the information with our government. So we believe our privacy rights have been undermined. So it's not a magic, even though there are benefits with social media. I certainly benefit by it because I do a program, you know, on the internet. But there's a limit to the benefits of that, and so we have to be cautious. Mainly ideas. To get the ideas out of non-interventionism is important to me.
Okay, Ron Paul, thank you very much for joining us there from Clute, Texas. Guys,
I think America would be a lot better if we had more politicians on the right, like Ron Paul, and
you were
on the
nodding
left,
along,
like
both
Bernie
of you.
Sanders. Because this is the kind of politics that we need to have in the country, not just these celebrities that are just using tweets and saying one thing just to get the vote, but acting completely different. And we need people that actually, debate ideas and not just simply rhetoric.
It's believing in something, isn't it, Tina? You guys were both nodding along. It's the first time we've had any agreement from the pair of you all hour.
I think that the communication, to have that type of open communication directly to the American people, not necessarily content of the tweets, but just that action of it being able to have that direct contact is valuable, and it will be valuable going forward in campaigns. That's the most important message I think we're both nodding, having to do with, is just that direct communication to Americans where they can hear directly from your president. Whether you like what he's doing or he's not, you can hear directly from him and make your judgments at that time.
Let's push back on that. Does the content of that direct communication, does that matter though? Is it just bluster, or does it have to be serious policy discussion and ideas?
No, I think having to do with the complete population of the United States, I think it's more important for the president on his tweets to be able to put out just general conversation, general things that he's looking at. I think from a policy standpoint, for all of us that are heavily involved in looking at policy of the United States, many of us take his tweets and don't take them very at face value. What we do is we go down and we look at the policies. And the policies that are being implemented behind all the tweets, many people are very happy with.
Social media and the direct communication can be good, but it could also be manipulated. And that's what Trump is doing. And that's why you need to have the role of the press. The press needs to fact check these things. People are spreading fake news, like even Russia is spreading fake news. These things can be manipulated. So the direct contact is a double-edged sword. Trump didn't necessarily win because he was some sort of political genius. He had a weaker opponent. I supported Bernie Sanders in that race, and I thought if it was Bernie Sanders, he would have defeated him. It was an anti-establishment year. Trump was running as a populist candidate. So the country and the population wanted something different, and Trump happened to just be the only other option other than Clinton.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Ahmed Bedier, Tina Datta, thank you both very much for joining us. Well, that's all for this special edition of the Newsmakers with me, Kamali Melbourne. I'll leave you now with a look back at some of our own coverage of the Trump presidency. Goodbye for now.